Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Social. My name is Chris Salas. I am Associate Professor of Social Work here at Paso Community College. Remember, the aim of our show is to bring forth awareness of various issues and topics that are relevant to our community, and sometimes about hidden gems. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Well, hopefully not a hidden gem, now that I think about it, but with us this afternoon, we have the Executive Director and the Clinical Director for Family Services of El Paso. Again, our Executive Director, David Chayer, and the Clinical Director, Ms. Claudia Ornelas. Welcome, everybody. How are you all doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having us, Chris. We're pleased to be here. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so it's a great opportunity for us to talk about our organization, what we do, and the impact that it has in our community. And Claudia is our expert in-house counselor, and they really works with our therapists and our clients really at the heart of what we do every day.
Yeah, and again, definitely, it's not a hidden gem, especially with the longevity of the agency. So, Claudia, tell us a little bit more about what is Family Services of El Paso?
Family Service of El Paso is a counseling agency, like you mentioned, in the El Paso community. It has been there, and David will share a little bit more of the history of it. But it is a counseling agency where we do just mental health. We talk, we have these psychotherapy sessions with populations from different ages, starting at 4 or 5 years of age. And we do family counseling, individual counseling, group therapy. Occasionally we run groups as well. And so that's all we do is mental health, focusing on helping the El Paso community.
Definitely. And so, great segue. David, tell us a little bit about the history of Family Services.
Sure. It's when I first began looking into it, I thought it was a typo on our website, but we've been providing services for 132 years in the El Paso community since 1892. And it started as one thing, and it became a nonprofit organization, I think, in the early 1950s, 1960s. And so we've continued to grow and continue to meet the needs, the increasing needs of mental health in our community. But we have a long history, proud history of being the largest mental health organization and the oldest mental health organization in the community. And we're continued proud again to be able to continue that legacy and meet the needs of more people that are coming in.
Definitely. And I mean, when we talk mental health, and Claudia, I guess this one is a little bit more on your plate. Help us understand, or help the audience understand, what is mental health, right? Because sometimes that term, or even the stigma associated with that term, can really turn people away from even accessing some of the services, right? Yes. So let's start off with just, what is mental health?
Good question. I think there is a common misconception when people hear about mental health, they associate right away with mental illness. And so they think, I don't have mental health, because they think of mental illness. But we all have mental health. And mental health is not only the emotional part, which is another misconception. Sometimes when people think of mental health, they think of emotions, but it's also the psychological part, is how we think and how we relate to each other. So it's also our social well-being. It's a group of different factors, mental health. It's not just one factor.
Gotcha. And so there's definitely a difference between mental health and mental illness, like you said, right? And so why would people go get services if, let's say, like you said, well, I don't have a mental health issue, I don't have a mental illness, I haven't been diagnosed with this, why should I get assistance, right? Why should people seek help? Why should people seek services?
And you used a word that is the key probably to this when you said diagnosis, because I think it is very interesting also when we think about our mental health. Maybe we don't have something that is diagnosable, or we don't suffer from symptoms that are like a cluster of symptoms to meet criteria for a diagnosis, but we have some difficulty, right? Like we have some struggle with coping, especially with stress. We were talking, right, or you were talking mainly about traffic earlier, right before we started this interview. And traffic is one of the main stressors. So why do we want to seek services? Because we face those maybe even on a daily basis where we just sometimes don't know how to manage, or we are so overwhelmed that we don't know what to do in the moment. And so seeking services can help us with those type of daily issues that we don't identify as mental health issues, right? But we're struggling.
Right.
I think too, there's a, excuse me, cultural, there's a stigma to seeing it. And so I use the example, if your heart's having issue, you go see a cardiologist. If you're you're having a tooth problem, you go see the dentist. But we are reticent to go and say, I want to speak to a counselor about something that's been bothering me, anxiety, depression,
Right.
or I'm going through a separation or divorce or whatever, a family situation. And so taking that step of faith and leap of faith and courage to reach out and say, you know what, this is more than I'm used to handling. Even for men, it's challenging because
Right.
there's a stigma like, well, you just put some dirt on it and get back in there, right?
Right.
But it's really important that people say, this could be helpful. And so the more we get that message out about how we're helping people, that it's confidential, that we can do it by telehealth. You don't have to come into our office. You're worried about, I know El Paso's the biggest small city I've been in, but people, hey, I know that car. So you don't have to come to our office. You can do it from the comfort of your home and a laptop and do a telehealth session with our counselors. And so, and the other, one of the challenges is, even if you recognize you have a condition, I can't afford it. So there's a barrier. What are these barriers to accessing mental health? And cost is certainly one of them.
Definitely.
And I think a large majority of our clients make less than $25,000 a year. And even for folks who are middle class, that's to pay for a regular cost of a counseling session is just something it's hard to do. Well, I've got food or daycare or whatever. There's things that we've got to do. And so we, as a nonprofit organization, are able to make that counseling affordable regardless of a person's income. And we're able to do that because of the support that we have and the student interns that we have and our professional counselors that are working with us to make that possible, and support from the community and donations and grants that make that affordable.
Great. It sounds like accessibility is almost a cornerstone of what Family Services aims to achieve, right? Make these services accessible, right? Like you said, not only through the different means of delivering the service, like telehealth, and again, for those, maybe Claudia, if you want to tell us what is telehealth for some of the audience members that are not quite sure what that means.
What that means, right? So telehealth is, there's a different system, but like the one that we use, platforms where the people, or we can, as therapists, we can securely connect with someone and via, like, it's like a phone call, right? As sometimes people, they say, can we do FaceTime? No, because it's protected. We're also protecting the privacy, the HIPAA. We have to protect the privacy of our clients. But it's like a video call. Like, if people think of FaceTiming as basically that you're seeing the therapist, and we're doing therapy. We can do the same exercises that we would do in an office. There are some modifications, of course. We can share the screen and we can share worksheets. But that's what telehealth is. And one thing that has changed with COVID in a positive direction is that now even the interventions that we apply, they have been updated, and they have they have been modified to be able to do most of what we were doing before in person that we didn't think we could do via telehealth. Now we can. And so it is a great opportunity to seek services via telehealth as well.
Would it be comparable to kind of what Doctors on Demand is?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And even doing counseling sessions over the phone is also another option that we have now. And I think people are more familiarized with that option because they had been doing medical appointments over the phone prior to COVID. But yes, so that's another option for people seeking services for mental health.
Yeah, and again, kind of on that same vein of accessibility, David, as the executive director, I'm sure that you're always looking at what is the next best way to ensure that the people that need the help get the help, right? So other than the telehealth, what else would you say that Family Services is doing to ensure that accessibility, that the people that need the help are getting the help?
I think one is understanding where our folks come from. And even, we have some clients, we have some staff members that live, in Horizon, and it can take an hour just to get down. And we're centrally located in El Paso, so it makes it easy for folks to get to, but there are challenges with getting there. And so even something like transportation. So we want to make sure we're able to provide those services and be accessible. The telehealth is certainly a great option that helps to do that, whether it's transportation or confidentiality, they want people to know. But I think the largest issue Two is partnerships in the community. So for us to, we can't do this alone. So we work very closely with a lot of other organizations. Isleta del Sur Pueblo, we've met with them. We do referrals with Goodwill, with La Fe. We have a great partnership with them as well. The Advocacy Center for Children, Child Guidance Center. We're working on a potential partnership with Texas Tech Med School that would provide a psychiatry resident to be in our building that could provide additional levels of support. So those are just a few examples of partnerships that we work in the community. But and NAMI of El Paso is a great partner of us, working to help get information out, going to all these different events and tables and sharing information about what is mental health and the stigma, and then referring them to organizations like ours that can provide the help. So that kind of a cross collaborative partnerships are really vital for us, helping to increase access to services as well.
Definitely. Right. And
no, I'm sorry. I was just going to add also is that the way that it helps with making those services affordable is because they have different programs already. So sometimes these partners that we have in the community, they have the funds, and we provide the service. And so developing this type of partnerships helps us to continue providing services at an affordable cost to the client. And so we're still serving more groups, specific groups in the community.
And you both touched on an aspect of family services that is shared by other agencies, right? It's not just particular to family services, but the educational component, right? That you mentioned, that another way that the agency ensures that accessibility is by bringing on some students, right? Whether they're from the social work department of our local colleges, universities, our counseling departments, right? That it not only allows them an area to practice their craft, but then at the same time, it increases the number of providers, which thus then increases the number of people that can get services, right? So tell us a little bit more about the educational component of family services.
Okay, so the educational component is where, like you were mentioning, we work with graduate students. So these are master level students who are either, most of them are done already with their coursework, and they are only doing their practicum or their internships with us, providing the actual services to the clients. And so it's at the master's level. And that would be probably the first layer of therapists, and then we have the professional therapists already that are licensed as associates. After someone graduates with a master's degree, then they have to take a test, and then now they become licensed, but they still have to be under supervision for 3,000 hours. So by family service, making this or coming up with this supervisory agreements with the LPCAs, we're able to have those LPCAs doing 3,000 hours. Maybe not all of them are direct hours with clients, but it's another layer of service that we're already providing. And so in most of them, the good thing about this, also about family service and this collaboration that we have with the schools, is that a lot of these LPCAs continue providing services as LPCs, like independent licensed therapists, eventually at family service.
And I think that also talks to the reputation of family services, right? That the people that do their internship there end up seeking and wanting to continue as employees there.
It's a very highly prestigious, and we get more requests sometimes than we can fill for students that want to do their internship with us. And I think what we kind of look at it is that process, but it's really a training institute. It's kind of a center for training and helping young students, well, not always young, but students who are wanting to get into their career. They have that opportunity to do those hours with us, develop those skills. And what's also important to note that El Paso County has been designated by the state of Texas as a mental health professional shortage area. So we have a growing demand of clients, folks who want an access to mental health services, and fewer number of professionals that are there to do it. And so we see ourselves as a leader in being able to make sure that we are addressing that issue, having training, those types of programs. And then once they finish the training and the internships and the 3,000 hours, many of them come to and work for us full time as well. So we have about 45 or so therapists at a given time throughout the year that are part of our workforce of making that happen. But it really is a huge testament to that training institute model that's been developed. Has really been a core of how we're able to meet that need. And last year, for example, we did over 21,000 counseling sessions,
Wow.
an average of 440 a week, which is just mind-numbing. And unless you've been in our office and you see the folks that are coming in and out, it is very busy. And that's just a testament to, I think, the more we get awareness out and shows like this that help people understand we're here. And I go out in the community, I do presentations, and I'll talk about what we do and how many clients we see, and then I'll say how many people have heard of family service before today, and maybe one hand goes up. And we really are the gym that you mentioned, the best kept secret in counseling and mental health in the community, outside of the folks who do mental health.
Right.
Within that circle, we're very well established, and our longtime executive director has been with us for a long. He's retiring, but 40 years with the organization, and so there's a lot of that respect for what we do, who we are, because of our history and those relationships that have been built over time.
Right.
And part of my job and with support for you and this program is helping us to continue to get that word out through meetings, through social media. And we're trying to pick up our social media a little bit more so folks can follow us on there as well.
Gotcha. Excellent. Well, let's shift gears a bit from the great work that Family Services does to, now let's look at mental health as a whole, at least for the El Paso area, right? As the largest provider of mental health services and such an established institution and providers in the region, how would you categorize or how would you describe the current mental health of our region, of the El Paso region?
I think now is more normal in a sense compared to what we were doing, how we were doing pre-COVID. But I think overall I really don't see in terms of how we do in mental health a big difference from how other places do. Right, like we see the same type of common symptoms or common conditions that people disclose about anxiety and depression. Those are, we always say that it's like a common cold. Who hasn't had a common cold, right? So we, at any point in time, we suffer from some anxiety or some depression, and so those are the most common symptoms that we see in the community. And sometimes we go through those episodes where different things happen that are cultural, that are regional, right? Like the violence in Juarez, and now we're going through people recovering from losses after COVID, a lot of trauma, which is not different from other places. We know that about 90%, close to 90% of people who actually seek mental health services suffer from trauma, and so a lot of those symptoms come from traumatic experiences, and so that's mainly what we see. But like I said, I don't see a big difference from what other places or other cities, other regions see. The main difference here is something that I think David already mentioned, is the language. So sometimes is, do we have enough providers that are proficient in Spanish so they can provide these sessions effectively? And so that's one of the shortages that I see also in terms of providers. Sometimes they know how to speak the language, but they don't feel confident doing those sessions. So that's another part of the educational component. Sometimes I try to challenge them. Okay, let's practice. How would you say this? But those are the main. If any difference, if I can identify any differences, probably that would be one. In terms more of the providers, skills regarding the language rather than the population.
Gotcha.
And I think too, and meetings that we're at with other providers, it's what we're seeing is and I think El Paso is representative of the country in terms of shortage and increased demand for services. But one of the things we're hearing is the higher number of youth, middle school and high school students that are recognizing, like, hey, I've got a challenge, I've got an issue.
Okay.
So we had, I think last year, 28% of our clients were between the ages of 5 and 17, about 700 or so, and about half of that number was 17 to 12, middle school to high school. And so part of our challenge, and I've talked with other nonprofits that do mental health And that's an ongoing issue for them as well, is retaining and recruiting and retaining our counselors and therapists, but also those who have that sort of specialty training for youth. We have 2 of our therapists that are kind of our designated child therapy. And we do, as I mentioned, a large number of our therapy sessions are with children. And it's very important that we, recognizing what those trends are and positioning ourselves to be able to meet the needs of the community. And that's something that we're going to continue to do.
It sounds, excuse me, at least when it comes to children, obviously, a child's not going to walk themselves to a therapy session and such, right? So it also, at least from my perspective, it sounds like the parents need to be aware of those issues, validate those issues, and then if need be, seek services, right? So being aware of, obviously not just family services, but services that are available within the community is also something that's beneficial. Again, the awareness piece is crucial.
Yes. And which is related to the stigma, what the population changes that David was mentioning. We have seen that even nationally, like suicide rates in kids, young kids, sometimes 6, 7, 8 years old, it's increased in the last few years. And so if we are able to train more of those providers in working with youth, then we're going to be doing better as a community. But I also can see how this is linked to the stigma, because it's exactly what you were mentioning, Chris, is if parents hear their kids saying, even advocating for themselves, saying, I need to talk to someone. But if parents have this stigma that how am I going to take my son or my daughter? What are they going to think about me, right? Because we're in this culture where it's the well-being of the group. And so the parents, they have this stigma that if I take my son, I'm the one that looks bad. I'm the problem. It's not my son or my daughter. And so, but overcoming that and having more providers, having more presentations in the community, I think it can help with the stigma. And also that we have these programs in the community where now counselors are coming to the schools, mental health counselors. And so I think that's probably something that has been benefiting our community as well.
Right. I recall during one of my internships, I just graduated with my bachelor's, and I was currently working with probate court, and well, you're a social worker, go talk to 3rd graders. I'm like, how am I going to explain to a bunch of 3rd graders what it is that I do, right? And so, but it's those type of things that definitely get the word out, get the awareness out of, and even sometimes, even like you mentioned, dealing or getting beyond the stigma of, oh, it's a social worker, right? People hear the word social worker and automatically think CPS, right? Yes. Oh no, they're going to take the kids away. That's not what we do, right? Or counselor that, oh, they're going to think I'm crazy, for lack of a better term. So if I go to the doctor, they're going to say something's wrong with me. Well, I would hope so, right? If there is something wrong, I would hope they find it so that you're able to get medication, get treatment. And the same with mental health, right? That it's not a bad thing to be diagnosed. If anything, it can open the doors to treatment to, I'm really hesitant to say, but maybe improve your quality of life.
Which is, yes. And that's absolutely right. Because when we think about the benefits, what are some of the reasons to look for services, and what are the benefits of actually getting the services and looking for those? And that's part of it. It's sometimes even just receiving the psychoeducation, knowing how our body responds to certain triggers. Remember, like how I was mentioning about trauma. I notice I still do some sessions also with clients, and working with clients that are trying to manage through trauma. I've learned how the way that they feel changes, improves once they know that, okay, if I get so anxious when this happens, is normal within the traumatic experience. And so psychoeducation by itself, it's already a benefit of therapy. Even when we're not ready to make behavioral changes, we're already benefiting.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think too, the impact that mental health has across all number of areas. And so if you're going through a financial challenge, that impacts your mental health, and the correlation between mental health and cardiovascular disease, a high blood pressure. So there's that connectivity, and physical health. And so there's so many things that affect our mental health every day, not just that it's just not siloed. And so I think part of too is raising the awareness, both with policy leaders and our government officials. I know that our district attorney's office and the sheriff's office have made are working on promoting more mental health awareness and being able to provide more services for mental health within those areas. And as well as looking at policy changes. There's been some federal policy changes that now increase access for mental health counseling for folks on Medicaid. So now they can see a licensed professional counselor beginning in January this year, and before they couldn't. It wouldn't be covered. And so those are things as well that we try to have some influence on, or at least let our voices be known of how those policy changes will have an impact, and whether it's in law enforcement, understanding issues more with judges. You mentioned probate. There's a lot of things, areas where we touch, where mental health, you look at the number of people in foster care or in juvenile justice that have a mental illness, and it's outstanding. And their numbers are just alarming.
Right.
There's such a connectivity between these two, and just having that conversation and recognizing that this exists is a good first step.
Definitely. And so that's a great segue into talking about some of the barriers that could potentially keep you off from doing the great work that you do, and that, again, other agencies across the community do, right? So what are some of the things other than stigma, right, that could potentially limit or hinder you all doing what it is that you do?
I think one of the biggest barriers is that we need to be able to grow and expand, and we're not in a position to be able to do that now. And I think part of that goes back to folks may not even know who we are and what we do, and that we are a nonprofit organization, and our ability to provide those counseling sessions at very limited cost or no cost is really dependent upon our ability to folks to support us financially. And so that's one of the things I want to be able to continue working on, is how we can increase our capacity, both in terms of how many staff we have or interns that we take, but also how many locations. I mean, RIEs, they're everywhere, right?
Right.
So you kind of look at it from a banking, where in the neighborhoods where we should be, where we know that there's high incidence of mental health, or where is the population growing? So we want to continue to be able to grow and expand to meet a growing and expanding need for mental health in our community. To me, that's one of the biggest barriers.
So how can the El Paso community help, right? How can we help not only family services, but how can we help in ensuring that the mental health of our community, of our children, of our neighbors, right, even ourselves, how can we ensure that we promote our mental health? What are some of the things that we can do on a daily basis? What are some of the things that we can do to promote that?
I think just being aware of that this is something that's going to impact us. So increasing awareness, sharing information with children, being aware of how they're doing. I don't know if TikTok's banned yet, but it's close to. But looking at their TikTok accounts, or what's happening in their lives and being aware of it, and then having a plan of, okay, how would I deal with this? Just awareness first and foremost at an individual level, family level, community level, and we're seeing that increase more. I think mental health is not as much as this dirty word as it was even 10 years ago. It's now it's just an accepted way, and even in how we recruit employees, we want to make sure that we're taking care of our employees too. So as employers, they can look at that. Employers could look at the benefits that they provide to their employees and see if there are employee assistance programs, or if their health insurance companies provide coverage for mental health counseling, whether it's us or anyone. But
right.
Most importantly is to get look at how we can do things to increase access to mental health services. Right. I think throughout the community, that's a big piece of it. Sharing information, and parents talking to their children about, hey, how are you feeling, and without sort of feeling judgmental. And for the parents to have support folks they can talk with, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, because as a parent, I know I'm not the only one who's ever struggled with a toddler who's been frustrated. So. But it's important to be able to have that sort of support mechanisms where you can talk to each other and learn how you can deal with things and be there for your family, and then that is a micro level, and then that continues to grow at a macro level across the community.
Okay. Well, again, this is one of the topics that I'm sure we could have 5, 6, 7 episodes on, right? The mental health, but I would first and foremost like to thank both of you for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules and really sharing information not only about family services but mental health overall, right? So first and foremost, again, thank you guys very much, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Chris, for having us on, and Claudia.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you would just give me 1 second so that
Sure.
I can, what I would say also to the audience is, if you've had experiences in counseling and you want to talk to like family and friends, just let them know how it works, so that if someone is struggling also, and you know that you can give them an opinion about your personal experience, how was your recovery process, and sometimes that can also help people to be more willing to look for services. But thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, definitely word of mouth,
was a
right,
pleasure
can
being
definitely help distill that stigma. Definitely, thank you for adding that. And again, you know, for our audience out there, whether you're watching this at home or on your cell phone, hopefully you're not driving, but thank you for letting us into your time. And again, remember, we just try to aim and make sure that we get as much information out to you all and about topics that are pertinent to El Paso. At the end of the day, all we ask is just keep it social.